Hey friends, it's Gloria and welcome back to another video. Today's going to be a follow-up to the unhaul Goodreads video that I did where I uploaded all of my books that I own into Goodreads, made a shelf, and asked you guys for recommendations. In total, I had 41 books recommended by all of you guys, which is so wonderful. That definitely moves those 40-ish books up my priority list out of like the 300 or so on my shelves, which I'm very excited about. And I'm so thankful that you guys commented, and it's not too late. If you didn't and you still want to, please go ahead and do so. But this is a follow-up to the video where I talk about my top 10 books that I own that you guys recommend that I read next or soon because you think I like them. So starting with the 5 books that got 2 votes each. I have one contemporary on the list, and that is The Storied Life of A.J. Thickery. It's a short read. It has a motion picture, has a movie adaptation. I don't know if I'm gonna like this one, but it's short and sweet, and so many people do love it that I want to give it a go. I think it's coming of age. I think there's a curmudgeon-y older character, perhaps. Has to do with a bookstore. Bookish in some way. Gabrielle Zevin is the author. She's now known for Tomorrow. Super well beloved. I have zero interest to read that book, but I do want to give this one a try. It keeps like popping up on my radar, even though I don't want it to be popping up on my radar, but after 2 of you recommended it, I will be prioritizing it. I don't own too many young adult books, but the one that got recommended was The Downstairs Girl by Stacey Lee. I love Ruta Sepetys, and she writes a lot of historical fiction for the young adult audience. And I've never tried Stacey Lee, but I know she has a few books. This one is set in Atlanta in the 1890s. I don't know too many other details than that, but I would love to try another YA historical fiction author, see if I get along with them. I've tried Elizabeth Wein. She wrote a series of books, and I've read Codenamed Verity. Something codename, but that one was really good, but I haven't read other of hers. But I'm interested to find another YA author. Then this book, I really am shocked that I have not read, and I really need to remedy it. And I think this winter season, when I love reading wintry books in the winter season, even though it's my least favorite season, Winter Garden by Kristen Hanna, it needs to be read. This is also has dual timeline, and it's set in Leningrad, now known as St. Petersburg in Russia, and I need to read it. Hopefully we'll love it. I need to reread The Nightingale. The first book I read by hers, I absolutely loved it. I don't remember literally a single detail from the book. Not a single one. Couldn't tell you anything about it except my emotional turmoil that book had on me and how much I loved it. And so I feel like I need to reread it. I've read quite a few of other Kristen Hanna's books, and none have reached that emotional level of amazingness for me, but so many people love this one. And I really need to fix having not read this. I need to read it. Then I have 2 Chunky Monkeys. I'm also not shocked that I haven't read this, but this one is so beloved. Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett is one of the top 10 like historical fiction books of all time. It's on so many people's lists. It is so heavy and so thick, and it's a trilogy. It's over 900 pages. It's about a building of a cathedral, which sounds super boring. This feels like it's stood the test of time, and still people love it, and still people claim it as a favorite. You know, the length shouldn't deter me because I read plenty of books that are long that I enjoy. I'm reading some really long ones right now randomly, and I'm all about it. It's just a lot. It's a lot, and I want to go in with like no expectations of, you know, gonna be falling in love with it, but hopefully I will be because it's so big. I don't like not finishing books, so I want to love it. I think I could. I just need to like muster up the courage, you know, to pick it up. And then 2 of you recommended Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell, a classic that, if I'm honest, I have zero desire to read in the near future. I think if I were to pick it up, it would be like next spring. So I'm going to, even though this is my top 10 priority list of books that I own, I'm not really feeling this one. And I'm not going to pick up a book if I'm not feeling it at all. And I'm not feeling this one right now, but I will try it eventually. Okay, moving into my top 4. The next 3 books all received 3 votes. So This Tender Land by William Kent Kruger received 3 votes. I'm also shocked that I have not read this one. Similar to Winter Garden, I think these 2 out of these top 10, I'm like, why have I not read these yet? Like, I need to read both of these as soon as possible. So yes, This Tender Land, I think everyone loves it except Shelley Swearingen. I think it's the only person that I've seen that didn't love it that I follow, but everyone loves this one. I think it's coming of age. It's set in the summer of 1932 in Minnesota. Young boys come together, float down a river, maybe like a found family aspect, because I think it has to do with orphan children. I've heard wonderful things. I really hope my expectations aren't too high, but I want to love it. Next, an author that I need to try, Diane Chamberlain. So many of you recommended The Dream Daughter. This is the book of hers to start with, I heard. I know nothing except it's dual timeline. I think most of her books are set in the Carolinas, and I can't remember which one, but this has an element of time travel, I believe, but I've heard it's really well done. I think it's mostly contemporary storyline, but again, I've heard great things and would love to find another author that I really enjoy reading. The only nonfiction that made it onto the list is Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. This one I only purchased because when I started BookTube, you know, and I started acquiring books because I didn't have very many. I went to Goodwill, that's where I'd go and I'd find books, and I got this one because someone, you know, raved about it, or it was in like the top 10 nonfiction book lists. I really don't like this cover, even though I think that's the author. And there is also a movie adaptation, which I didn't know. This is the winner of the Pulitzer Prize. That is the nonfiction that made it onto the list. And again, I don't really have a strong pull to read this, but because it is in my top 3, I will get this read soon. And then the number 1 slot, the book that had 5 votes, so 5 of you voted for this book, which I'm actually very surprised by. Out of all of the books that I own, this one is the one that made its way to the number 1. It feels like an underdog. Like, I would have never guessed that 5 people would vote for this, and that would be the top 1, and that is A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. All I know is that this is a modern classic. This was written in 1968 originally, and this is the 75th anniversary edition that I have republished in 2018. I know it's a coming of age story about a young girl, and it's in Brooklyn, New York, hence in the name. Other than that, I don't know anything else, but I'm excited to read it because so many people love it. It says it's a beloved American classic about a young girl's coming of age at the turn of the 20th century. So yeah, that is my top 10 list. And since this made its way to the number 1 slot, the most recommended book by all of you that I own, I'm gonna read it in this month. I will report back. So this is a top 10 list plus a tiny reading vlog on how this book goes. And I'm nervous because I hope I love it. I'm gonna go in totally blind. I really have 0 expectations about this. And I mean, if you're following me, then you know, maybe I won't love it. Maybe I will. And we'll never know with Gloria. But I hope to be pleasantly surprised. As surprised as I am that it's on this list and that it's the number 1 slot, I hope in that same way that I also love it. So I will report back. So I finished the book actually probably about a week ago now, and I should have filmed sooner, but life got in the way. I wanted it to sit with me and to think about it for a bit. Overall, I'm happy to report, based on all of your guys' recommendations, that I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this one. This was a fantastic recommendation and a fantastic book. I think this is a great classic, and I'm surprised it's not more popular than it is. Like, I really hadn't heard of this book prior to BookTube. I didn't learn about it in high school. I didn't really take too many English classes at all in college, so I assume maybe that's where it would be more popular, because I think this is a beautiful work of American literature that is also so atmospheric and has an amazing sense of place in Brooklyn, New York, and what life was like there for people. My overall feeling reading this, which sometimes I have when reading classics, is I'm going back to my school days, like to being in high school or being in college and reading a book and it giving me the sense that I am learning something new and I feel like I need to like report on it, or it's just, this felt, I don't know, I'm having a hard time pulling the words, but it felt a little bit like a book that I need to read for school. I think that's what I'm trying to get at, which isn't a bad thing, but I just felt like this would have been a good buddy read book and a good book discussion book, and maybe that was missing a little bit for me. Overall, this is a coming of age story following a young girl. I believe it starts at like she's 12 years old or 11 years old, and then we follow her through all of her teen years into her 20s. And it was quite a melancholy read, very sad book, and her circumstances in her life are of extreme poverty, and she lives in this tiny little apartment in Brooklyn with her mom and dad and brother, again in really extreme poverty. And we get to know all of the nitty-gritty details about her family, her aunts and her cousins and her uncle and the neighbors, and the love story of her parents and all the other characters that are involved throughout the years of her adolescence and the things that she encounters, and ultimately just the grit that it takes to survive in poverty, having to pick yourself up and get a job and get through it, survive with your family. There were definitely some characters in here that I liked more than others. I liked her as a main character. There was a slight distancing. I feel like I wanted to know her a little bit more deeply, but I loved the relationship she had with her younger brother. I thought that was very cute and sweet. Her mom was also a bit distant and cold, but I think that was on purpose. This was a bit of a long read, but I found the audiobook excellent. It was a great way to get through the story, and I really liked it. I gave it 4 stars. It wasn't an all-time favorite. It's not my new outstanding 5-star read of a book, but I understand why it is for others, and I understand why it's a beloved American classic that stands the test of time. I don't know if it won any awards, but I would understand if it did. This was a super solid recommendation, so I really appreciate all of you guys that said to read it, and I did, and I liked it. So that's awesome, which makes me even more excited to read more of your guys' recommendations and get to those books that are on my priority list. So hopefully you'll see more of those sprinkling in through my wrap-ups as the year continues and closes out. And it's never too late to recommend a book that I own. I will link the Goodreads shelf of all of my own books and the previous video where I talked about all this, and you can add your vote to my recommendations list. Move any books up my priority list. Thank you so much for spending some time today with me, and I will see you guys in another book video soon. Bye!